Good afternoon. Today is Thursday, October 21st, 2021 at 4 o'clock. This is the Town of Dewey Beach Special Town Commissioner meeting that's being held at the Dewey Beach Life Saving Station as well as virtually. Pursuant to the agenda, I'd like to convene the town meeting with their opening ceremony, starting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. I will ask for a roll call, starting up here with the commissioners.
Dave Jasinski.
Elizabeth Gibbings.
Myself, Bill Stevens, acting mayor.
Fred Townsend, town solicitor.
Bill Zolber, town manager.
And on our YouTube or live virtually, we have commissioners.
Gary Persinger.
Gary Persinger and Commissioner Paul Bauer, as well as recognizing Mr. Jim Hughes, as well as our town admin, Kate Banizak, as well as members of the public that are here to join us. Prior to adoption of the agenda, I had asked that we can amend, if possible, to allow for public comment. I think that was an oversight when the agenda was. So can I have a motion to adopt the agenda to allow for public comment as part of number one? Motion. First and second, all in favor? Aye. Hearing all ayes, the agenda has been adopted with amendment to allow for public comment. We'll move right into number one, to discuss and possibly vote to refer to the Planning Commission proposed expansion of an existing conditional use for the property located at 1818 Coastal Highway, Dewey Beach, Delaware, formerly known as map 20.18, parcel 149.00, located in zoning district RB2, as submitted by Steve Montgomery, authorized member of Starboard Claw Land Company, LLC. So with that being said, I believe at first that we're going to ask for the representative of Steve Montgomery, as we know it as the Starboard Claw Land Company, to start.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens, and welcome to your new role in that chair.
Thank you.
And welcome, Commissioner Gibbons. Mayor Stevens, members of council, Mr. Zolper and Mr. Townsend. My name is Glenn Mandalis. I'm an attorney with Baird Mandalis Brockstead. I do represent Starboard Claw Land Company, LLC, who's the application on this matter, who's been before you previously on a rezoning request. Thank you first for conducting this special meeting. I know it's sort of out of your daily routine, but we appreciate it greatly. By now you're aware that Starboard Claw is the owner of 1818 Coastal Highway, where Hammer's Head is located, and the property at 26 Bellevue Street, which is right behind and adjacent to the Hammerhead's property. The tax parcel numbers our tax parcel, I think the mayor already read them, but let me say it again, 334-20.18-149 and 334-20.18-150. The zoning designation for both parcels is Resort Business 2. So the owners have a vision to create a restaurant to be known as Starboard Claw at this location. It would be yet another addition to the Starboard family of restaurants, and demonstrating the commitment of this institution to Dewey Beach. This restaurant would be one that would serve amazing seafood with the Starboard's kind of iconic flair. So we're requesting an expansion of the existing conditional use that's on parcel 149. That's the one right on the corner of Coastal Highway in Bellevue, onto the parcel at 26 Bellevue. That's one right behind and adjacent. So we're essentially asking that the conditional use be expanded so that it covers both properties. And this is the first step in that process. There is a provision in your code, section 185-73, titled changes and amendments, that would allow you to bypass referring this to the Planning Commission if you decide that the change proposed is not significant. We're not suggesting that this is not a significant change, so we are asking that the application be forwarded to the Planning Commission for its review and recommendation. As a general overview, the proposed use is appropriate for the property in our view because it's largely surrounded by similar, and in many cases, maybe even more intense uses. The Bottle and Cork and Jimmy's Grill are right across the street. got ice cream shops and restaurants on either side of the Hammerheads property. The 2018 CDP, we think, demonstrates the consistency of this use with the plan. It provides that your plan provides that the RB2 district lines both sides of Coastal Highway. The purpose of the zoning district is to provide a middle level of commercial development intensity in a Main Street-like environment. And we think the Starboard Clause vision perfectly satisfies that pronouncement in the CDP. So Starboard Claw will be a 2-story restaurant with indoor and outdoor dining on both floors. The first floor, and I don't know, we have things that are loaded to the website, site plans and seating plans. Would it be helpful to show this on the screen now, or are we even able to, given that we have participants virtually?
And for those that are watching virtually, all of the documents that Mr. Mendel's is referring to is available on our website under the meeting, as well as for those that are here, they're in the back. So yes, if you'd like to put those,
Thanks.
please feel free.
So probably best to show like the seating plan, I guess. There it is. So the first floor of the restaurant will have 1,891 square feet of patron area. As you're looking at the screen now, the image on the left is the upper floor. The image on the right is the main level. For reference, the upper right-hand corner and the image to the right is the kitchen area. Right above that on the second floor will be storage. For reference, the orangish area that's shown is patron area as is defined under the code. So the first floor again will have 1,891 square feet of patron area. Second floor will have 1,803 square feet of patron area, making the entire restaurant have approximately 3,700 square feet patron area. 204 seats are proposed in the restaurant, with 88 of them on the first floor and 116 on the second floor. Again, a little bit for reference, on this main level, this is kind of outdoor dining, but it would be screened here. Above it on the second level would be an outdoor deck. This is also an outdoor deck. I know some of the commissioners can't really see where I'm pointing. Would it be helpful if I was over there? I just know this won't pick me up if I'm over there.
You need to
I
be-
can follow this.
Okay.
one.
Okay, gotcha. So demonstrating that the primary purpose will be that of a restaurant rather than a bar. I know that probably is a question, given that Starboard's anchor location is I would argue it's got a lot of restaurant kind of aspects to it, but it's also very much a bar. Only 32 seats in the entire restaurant of those 204 will be dedicated bar top seating. And that seating is mostly right here on the outdoor deck where there's not a bar. Over here, there's a few seats by the second floor bar. The first floor bar is kind of hidden by the faces here, but it's right over in this area, and we'll have some bar seating. But all the rest of the seating in the restaurant is dedicated to permanent seated dining. There will be trash receptacles that'll be enclosed and screened. They're covered by the images. There'll be some raised planters proposed in the front of the building. Unfortunately, I don't think we have the initial renderings. There's some initial renderings that I've seen, and they're really fabulous. I mean, a very nice looking location. I think it'll be a great addition to the town. We'll certainly have all of those renderings available if this is referred to the Planning Commission for their review. There's a lot I could discuss. You might have questions, but since today's purpose is predominantly for a referral to the Planning Commission, I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, first of all, Mr. Mendel, thank you for your presentation. I'll ask that if, we'll have comments from the commissioners, as well as we're going to open up for the public comment. So if you can stay throughout afterwards in case of anything obviously additional that you can answer, I appreciate it.
Happily. Thank you, Mayor.
So can we ask Mr. Mendel's questions about his plan?
Of course, I believe it's fair.
Okay. So I don't know. This is really a question for you as well as maybe our building inspector or something like that. For single use or single stall restrooms in the plan, is that normal for a 200 patron restaurant? I just don't know the answer to that.
The plan complies with the building code. I mean, it's a good question, and you always want to have enough of those facilities. I think Hammerheads right now has been kind of limited by that aspect of it. But I know it's building code compliant is what I can say. I don't have an engineer here. We will have them there at the planning commission to explore those questions further.
And then when you talk about the tables, how many of those are high tops and how many are just regular, like normal table height seating? Do you have
I'm sorry, I don't have that number.
Okay.
I don't.
That's really all I had about the indoor aspects. The only other question was
I'll make sure we have that answered at the planning commission.
the outdoor waiting area. Is that going to be also consumption as well?
It is not intended to be at this point. Okay, the waiting area.
One of the questions that neighbors had was concerned about music, and this is we're talking restaurant that happens to have alcohol with a few places that you can sit. I don't see any place where there would be music. Is this? But I saw someplace else that acoustic was possible.
I'm just looking back at the draft of the ordinance, and the ordinance as drafted under number 2 of the condition says there shall be no loudspeakers or amplifiers on the exterior of the building. As drafted, we don't take any issue with the ordinance, so we don't intend to have outdoor amplification music.
Commissioner Bauer?
No, I'm just going through here. I don't see where the bathrooms are. I'm looking at the map of the seating. It's not in those, right?
It is in the seating. Let me
Go to the left side near where the staircase is. That help?
On the
Says
left side, I
PWD.
see the,
So
all
above
right,
the
yeah, now I
staircase,
see it. Okay.
PWD.
Yep.
Powder. Got it.
Yeah, now I
and the
see it.
same
Okay.
location on the second floor, right above each other.
The same on the second. Okay.
Right.
All right. I mean, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of bathrooms in there, but that's, I mean, planning and zoning can work on that. I don't have any questions at this point.
Yeah, and I'm taking notes.
Commissioner Persinger?
Yeah, I don't have any questions of Mr. Mandelis at this point. I do have some comments later, but not at this point.
Okay. So at this point in time, I won't go through my comments. I know, but for the town, if anyone from the town wants to come up. Obviously we have some issues that we're going to need to discuss. Sending this to planning and zoning is an element that we're going to want to do regardless, to go through their process to make sure everything is on par and consistent. We obviously have a larger issue to talk about, which is the parking situation, and to hopefully come to some level of agreement in terms of path. In review of the documents last night, I do want to kind of point out one thing for the general public, as well as for those that are here, that are watching us, as well as the one here, that if you look at the map, what has been provided by Starboard Claw, there seems to be an indication of 9 parking spots. It's my understanding that the 7, hold on, I got to move farther back, the 7 or 6 that are currently on Bellevue Street are part of the town. Those are public parking spaces and not private parking. And so they would be seen as such if this was to go forward. So it was just more of a comment so that we're all on the same page when it comes to what the parking or what the parking commitments will be. I will now open it up to the general public, if that's okay.
And Mayor, as you do that, I think the applicant understands the process that we're in today. I think the commissioners understand the process that we're in, but I would like to emphasize something that Mr. Mandela said, and that's that this is it's almost a perfunctory stage. And I wouldn't want the public to get the idea that we're advancing an application without spending very much time digging into it. And our process requires a matter such as this before it can be approved to be subjected to 2 public hearings, the first held by the Planning Commission. Mr. Mandalis also pointed out that were this group to come to a conclusion today that the proposed changes were not significant, we could bypass the entire process and grant an approval. And even the applicant is not contending that that would be a reasonable thing to do. So I wouldn't want anyone who's not familiar with our process to come to the conclusion that we are not giving this due attention. Today's process is merely involving the referral of it to the Planning Commission in the beginning of a more in-depth look into the application.
I did have one question about the process.
Mhm.
I know when it goes to the Planning Commission that they could potentially request modifications for the approval or conditions for the approval. When it comes from the Planning Commission back to us, is there another subsequent vote for conditional use, or is that potentially it? And are changes allowed when it comes back to us?
Yes, so ultimately, council or the commissioners have the authority to grant or deny the application, and likewise to impose conditions.
Okay.
So this group has the final say and is not bound by a recommendation either to vote in favor of what Planning Commission recommended or against what Planning Commission recommended. You have the full benefit and of that experience, as well as the authority to impose your own conditions following that public hearing. Otherwise, the second public hearing would be of limited value because their suggestions wouldn't be able to be incorporated into the approvals.
Okay. Any other questions, commissioners? Let's open up for public comment then. Is there anyone from the public here that would like to make a comment? Not seeing anyone. Kate, is there anyone in the waiting room? Yeah, let them in, please. Do I hit it?
You can hit it, it'll turn it off.
Okay. Okay.
Easy button.
Must be Paul's.
Their suggestions wouldn't be able to be incorporated into the approvals.
Okay.
It's like there, and you'll just have to tell
Any
them.
other questions, commissioners? Yes, for those that have comment for Miss, I don't know if it's S.A. Robbins or Sarah.
Steve.
Oh, it's Steve.
Yeah.
Steve, if you can mute your Facebook and then let us know.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we can hear you. Yes, please. go
Great.
ahead,
I
sir.
had to get off of YouTube and back on here. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope everyone is doing well in Dewey. I'm here in Bethesda, Maryland. We have a beautiful day out today, so I hope you're having the same nice day there. And thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'm going to be very short. First of all, I want to reiterate what I said at the zoning meeting, which is for the restaurant to come on board and create a new use, I think will be really good for the town of Dewey. And that I think that somebody like Steve Montgomery and Chris Shell and Toasty, I can't remember, Keith, I think is his first name, but I can't remember his last name, are really stand-up people. And they've been stand-up throughout this whole process. And I'm really just more interested, because we live on Bellevue and are working with some of the neighbors just to keep people up to speed. I also want to just take 1 second and thank Bill Zolper and Jim and Dawn for incredible responsiveness, just for somebody who's not familiar with the process and getting on the website and getting the documents and returning phone calls and emails. You really have a terrific staff and you should be commended. We really do appreciate it. I'm glad that you're going to refer this to the Planning Commission, because while my wife and I are both supportive of having a brand new restaurant here, there are issues that we do believe need to be addressed. And I think that Monty and his team are responsive to them, including, and thankfully, this is not an issue that anyone actually even needs to make a decision on, I think, which is, for example, outdoor activities after 11 o'clock would be shut down on the decks to respect the residential neighborhood. That's in your code. So we think that is good. I do think when you go to the Planning Commission that buffering and fencing along the lot line between 26 Bellevue and 24 Bellevue should be looked at by the Planning Commission to make sure that there's adequate buffering. And there are certain issues that were in that document that others submitted that are just, I think, protocol to just being good neighbors. And I have no doubt that Mr. Montgomery and his team will be good neighbors as this goes through the Planning Commission. I hope that the Planning Commission hearings are accessible by this type of Zoom meeting like we're doing now. As much as I love coming down to Dewey, I don't know when the next hearing will be, but not like the summer and the winter or the fall months. It's a little more difficult. And so I would just say that, again, supportive, but I do think there are issues that we need to just make sure that are addressed so that everyone is comfortable and happy with the use. And I think that the commissioners have sort of identified those for the Planning Commission to take a look at. And I look forward to following this and ultimately having a really nice new use on the property. So
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else? Okay.
And I'm just assuming in my comments that this is, in fact, I wish I really wasn't going to comment, but I'm assuming from all the comments that this will go to through the process of the commission as the applicant.
We're gonna discuss that right now, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, being that we have no one else in the public here that wants to make comment, or no one else that's here virtually to make a comment, we will formally close public comment. And I would think it's time for us to either make a motion or to discuss internally if we're going to send this for a vote for down the planning and zoning. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to communicate a few things before we do that, and that is that I don't believe, I believe that there might be a parallel path, and I'll just throw that out there, that one is that we're sending this to planning and zoning for their review. I would also just state that in reviewing this, it may also behoove us as from a commissioner perspective to also ask planning and zoning, not in light of 26 Bellevue, but also to do a complete review of section 185 and the parking, just to make sure that it's current and up to date in doing what it was intended to do, which is to, for public safety and in the public's best interest. So with that, I'll open up to the commissioners. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. That's all right. I would motion that we refer to the conditional use application and the site plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission with the provision that deviations from the parking requirements require Board of Adjustment, either approval or exception, and a site plan is submitted showing the actual intended parking that they intend to get approval for.
If I could, I don't think that's an unreasonable notion, but I don't think it needs to be part of the motion to refer the matter to the Planning Commission. And I'm referring to the issue of the waiver / special exception. So I think that's a matter that is under discussion, and we've had we were attempting to speak today about that, but time ran short. I think in the coming days we'll resolve that issue. Ultimately, the applicant has to decide what is best for them. And if they wish to pursue relief from one body or the other, there are certain consequences related to that. I don't think we need to make the referral to the Planning Commission contingent upon some legal conclusion regarding this group's authority to grant a waiver from parking.
Right. So how if we don't require Board of Adjustment approval or exception or whatever it's called, how does that bind or not bind us? And how does the P&Z Commission know what they need to do their approval?
Well, it would be, I think, incumbent upon me as advisor to the Planning Commission to come to some resolution on my advice to council and to Planning Commission on that subject between now and when they hear it, and obviously to cooperate and coordinate with the applicant so the applicant has fair notice as to what is expected of them. That the applicant may or may not choose to advance the request for relief from the parking requirement. That's in their hands. So I think that at this stage, all we really need to do is refer it to the Planning Commission as opposed to deciding a legal question as to the jurisdiction of this group.
Okay, so
If I can just.
I really want to kind of understand what will happen. So suppose the Planning and Zoning Commission approve this as stated with the parking as stated here.
They don't approve it. They make
They
a
make
recommendation to this
Okay.
group.
Right.
And they don't bind this group in terms of their recommendation. And it's kind of the opposite side of the question and answer that we had earlier regarding
Right.
what your authority is.
Right. So I guess what I'm kind of wondering is without some type of variance to allow or waiver, as they asked for in their letter, the plan would need to be significantly modified, not minorly modified, right? Because there's a very significant parking requirement in the code. And I'm not really talking about the merits, whether they should get that or not. I'm just kind of what's going through my head is the plan would change dramatically if there was no waiver or there was no Board of Adjustment variance or exception to it. And it would almost be like a very different plan. So I'm trying to kind of make sure we don't end up in a situation where in a subsequent commissioner meeting, we're completely doing a complete redesign of the overall project. If you kind of understand what I'm talking about.
I certainly do. And that's why I meant to say it's incumbent upon me in consultation with the applicant's counsel to reach a conclusion on that matter as soon as possible, to be fair to the applicant. So the applicant doesn't advance an application which they ultimately have to deviate from, which then arguably lessens the value of the Planning Commission's review and leaves you feeling like you didn't get the benefit of that as counsel.
Right.
So I think our sentiments are all 100% in harmony here, probably the applicants and yours and mine. I'm not comfortable with the motion to refer the matter to the Planning Commission, including that as a term.
Okay, well, if that's your recommendation, I'll strike the Board of Adjustment approval or exception as part of the motion.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We have a second or discuss, and Gary?
Yes, I would have seconded the initial motion. I think I have a harder line view than was just expressed here. We have to approve a site plan before we send it to the Planning Commission. That's part of the code. And we have to approve a site plan that satisfies the requirements of Chapter 185, which is our entire zoning code. For us to approve this as a site plan and send it to Planning and Zoning for their review would in fact mean that we were sending them a site plan that does not meet the requirements of Section 185. I am uncomfortable with being able to do that. I don't think that is something that we are authorized to do in this situation. I'm not against this. I'm not against considering a review of the parking. There clearly is a very significant cliff once you go from 2,000 square feet to 2,001 square feet, which I think if you look at it, you think about it, you're really going from 0 parking spaces to 11. That is a problem, but it is in our code. There's a long history of interpretation of that is consistent with exactly that, of only requiring parking in excess of 2,000 square feet of patron area, but including all of the patron area when you do that. So I can see that our town attorney has his hand up and wants to respond to my comments, but again, I don't know how we get out of this. How do we? I'm uncomfortable with passing this along to Planning and Zoning when the site plan does not conform to the requirements of the town code, without some caveat in there and passing that along to tell them that this may comply with in all other aspects to our zoning code, but in this one aspect it does not. And there needs to be some way of resolving and getting relief from that. And to my mind, we're not able to, as a town council, can't grant waivers can't grant exceptions or variances to the town code. That's the purview of the Board of Adjustment, not the town council. I'll stop there.
Yeah, Gary, it's again, Dave, very good points on both accounts. I think that what the question is, obviously we're in support of improving the property, in support of improving the overall landscape of the town of Dewey Beach. But obviously what has been presented, which would only create double the work by reviewing two plans or sending two plans down to planning and zoning, is this parking issue. And is the parking issue going to be through, if it can be, which is what I'm going to ask you, Council, is the ability to waive this part of the code a possibility? If not, it's my understanding that it would need to go to the Board of Adjustments in terms of them to grant this variance and or for planning and zoning to modify the code so that they would, not that we're doing this specifically for this purpose, but as a review overall of the parking code. To me, there's only three paths here, right? With plans as presented. Is that correct?
It is, except you referred to the planning commission modifying the code. And of course, that's the council's responsibility. Listen, what my takeaway from this is the applicant has identified this as an issue. There's no question that the applicant, at least at the present time, does not intend or would like not to have to comply with the parking requirements. So the issue is not that the applicant is raising this issue. The question is which body will have the authority to field the application to grant relief, not whether relief needs to be granted. Everybody knows that if the applicant wishes to have or not to have off-street parking, they're going to need relief from that. So when we get an application like this, where it's understood that there is a request for relief from a zoning requirement, we have two choices. We can say, we're going to stop the process and we're going to send you to the Board of Adjustment, or we're going to come to some conclusion as to whether or not we can grant this relief, but we're going to stop the process. And I don't think that's the appropriate approach. And I don't think that's been the approach of the town in the past. I think the town would say that this matter, if it ultimately needs to go to the Board of Adjustment, can go to the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission at the same time. And I think that's the most appropriate path for us to go. So,
but as you said, the applicant has that in there. It's for them to do whether they want to go to the Board of Adjustments. But we're also saying at this point in time, we have not rendered a legal opinion or decision as to whether or not we have the authority to grant that waiver. Is that correct?
That's right. But I think we're going to come to a conclusion on that subject in the coming business days. And regardless of how we come down on that question legally, the applicant is going to have some decisions to make as to whether they want to pursue it, and whether, if it goes to the Board of Adjustment, they wish to pursue it in a different fashion than if they wish to pursue it here.
So it's not clear that we as council have the ability to waiver or to release. So that is not on the table at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
It is to, whether there is a motion and or a second to send this to planning and zoning.
Okay, so before I'm comfortable kind of continuing down my motion, I have a specific question for Fred based on Commissioner Persinger's comments. Commissioner Persinger said that our referral to planning and zoning constitutes approval of the site plan. And I want to understand from our town solicitor whether that is in fact accurate.
Well, I'm not sure how that could be accurate, because if it were accurate, then I'm not sure what the point of sending it to the Planning Commission would be. It's a conditional use process, and I understand there's the opportunity through the conditional use process to impose additional restrictions on a use which are deemed to be appropriate given the particular characteristics of the project. Again, there's no implication here, nor is the applicant arguing that they are offering the minimum parking required. It's it's not, no one's sneaking anything past us, and the applicant is not going to be in a position to argue, well, since you sent it to Planning Commission, you have deemed us not to be responsible for complying with the parking requirement. That's not the case at all.
All right, well, given your answer, what I will do is I will just do an additional modification on my original motion to say that this referral does not constitute approval of the site plan, and then my motion will stand, and hopefully someone's comfortable seconding it.
Your motion is to send it to planning without that.
Do you want me to start over?
Yeah, can you start? I think it'd be a lot easier.
So
Thank you.
motion to refer the conditional use application and site plan to the P and Z commission, and that the site plan that they ultimately submit show the actual parking to be provided on the applicant's property, and that this referral does not constitute approval of the site plan.
I can second that.
Do I have a vote? All in favor? Oh,
Yeah.
Gary, for more discussion. Okay.
Yes.
Some more
more
discussion, too.
please.
Okay.
I still, I appreciate the fact that I'm still not sure that that is appropriate. I do believe, and I can't find the specific language here, but I do believe that in sending it to the Planning and Zoning Commission, that we have therefore approved the preliminary site plan for a project. The Planning and Zoning Commission, it's not their role to decide whether or not something is in conformance with our town code. There are lots of other requirements that they have to deal with. They have to make sure that the conditional use, the location is appropriate, the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare will not be adversely affected. Adequate off-street parking facilities will be provided. The use will not contribute to a traffic problem or congested roads, et cetera. So there are lots of other issues other than just approving the preliminary site plan. Preliminary site plan has a number of technical requirements, technical pieces of information. One of which is a calculation of the required number of parking spaces. We can waive that. There may be some situations where that's not going to inform a proper decision. That's also language for the code. Will not inform a proper decision on a project. But in this case, clearly, adequate parking is a part of the discussion here. So again, I'm not trying to oppose this, but if we're going to pass a motion here, I guess I'm fine with saying it does not constitute approval of the site plan. But I would also like to put something in there about pending appropriate resolution of the appropriate, purview for resolving the question of gaining relief from the parking requirement as stated in section whatever it is for the parking requirement, something to that effect. Would that be acceptable as an amendment?
Do you have any issue with adding that to the motion? Was that hearable for you, Kate?
Ashley's gonna be taking it.
So it's her problem.
She can watch it over 10 times.
Okay.
So the motion fails as it would second it. So we need to redo the motion because.
Yeah, I modify my motion as.
Wait,
amended.
hold on. Paul, did you want to say something prior to the
Yeah.
motion?
Can I jump in on the discussion here? I mean,
Yes.
here's my, I'm sitting here thinking about what are the possible outcomes of this, right? I mean, so eventually what it's going to come down to in planning and zoning is whether the parking requirement is required before they send it to us or not. That's my understanding of it. And I look at this and let's just say the outcome comes back that, yeah, you got to provide, what is it, 11 parking spots, Gary? 12, something like that, based on 19. Okay.
18 and 19. Yeah.
18 and 19 parking spots, whatever that number is, 20. We'll just call it 20 for now. So essentially what the applicant could do is use his first floor along Route 1 as parking and put his 2 floors above it because he's still allowed a 35-foot building. So, I mean, that's a possible outcome. And it settles the applicant's, requirement for parking at that point. So, and I think that's all part of the discussion of P and Z. I mean, if parking is required, I mean, I think you all know how I feel about parking. I mean, I think it's it was a great idea at the time, but I think most people take Ubers in and out. And frankly, I'd rather people buy parking passes and permits to come into town. So, whatever those outcomes are, I'd like to see that in the hearing of P and Z and see where it goes from there. Is there a way that we can motion this, that let P and Z come back and say, we recommend that parking is required, or we recommend parking is not? I mean, essentially it's the same site plan. It's whether it goes up a floor or not. I mean, you can draw 20 parking spots or 19 or 18, whatever it is, underneath it. And you just walk upstairs to get to the restaurant. I mean, just a
Okay.
thought. I mean, essentially, you're going to get the same square footage, whether you're going to make parking spots underneath or not. I mean, that's the question.
That's a horrifying image that you just painted, though.
I know. I mean, but that's the question when we get into parking with it. I mean, they don't have enough space to put a kitchen in if they have to do parking. So essentially, it becomes a bar, not a restaurant.
Commissioner Persinger.
Well, I don't think the question is, the applicant wants relief from the parking requirement. The question is, what's the appropriate way to do that? And so my suggested addition to the motion was to leave that as an open question. Let this thing go through to the planning commission. I don't think it's the planning commission's responsibility to sort this out. It has to be sorted out appropriately. It's either Board of Adjustment or it's us. And, again, I very firmly believe it's Board of Adjustment and not us. But let's leave that as an open question, add that to the motion. Use the formulation of the motion that Commissioner Jasinski proposed, and that is, this would not constitute approval of the site plan, and send it along to planning and zoning. And that would give our town solicitor and Mr. Mandelis and whoever else needs to be represented the opportunity to sort this out and decide what's the appropriate body to sort out this issue of how do you get relief from the parking requirement.
And Fred, I have a question on that as well.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I always thought Board of Adjustment dealt with the hardship of an existing property versus a new zoning code. I might be wrong in my assumption of that, though. And Fred, hopefully you can sort that out for me.
Your question is whether the Board of Adjustment's jurisdiction is restricted to an existing property, and in the course of redeveloping a property, you don't have the right to request a variance from the Board of Adjustment. Is that your question?
No, I always envision Board of Adjustment as somebody coming in with a hardship saying, hey, I can't do it this way. I need relief. And, and this is why. But I always looked at it as from an existing property requirement. Like we did down the street when that was zoned commercial, and, after 10 or 15 years, no one ever moved in. So we zoned it, they granted relief to make that a residential property. So I always thought Board of Adjustment existed for existing properties, not new properties.
Well, this is an existing property that is proposed to be redeveloped. And in the course of redeveloping this property, the applicant is saying, they haven't expressed it in these terms, but they're saying they're attempting to make normal improvements to the property, and they're confronted with an exceptional practical difficulty or a difficulty in meeting a code requirement. And they're asking for relief from the code requirement. I mean, I don't want to put words in their mouth because they haven't had an opportunity to make their case. But I don't think that is at all an inappropriate claim to be brought to a Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Commissioner Persinger.
Yeah, just one other point. However we sort this motion out, I just want to make sure. I had a couple of comments on the ordinance that will accompany this referral to planning and zoning. So I just didn't want to lose track of that. I wanted to make those before it went to planning and zoning. So I don't know if it's now's the appropriate time, or I should do that later.
Prior to that, Ms. Hinks, did you have something that you wanted to say in regards to do you want to make any comments at all?
Yes.
Please come to the podium.
In reference to the actual code itself, I've copied down some of the procedures for a conditional use. Of course, we've got a preliminary site plan that has been submitted. We also have a request for a conditional use and a proposed draft ordinance that's required to be presented to you folks. Within that preliminary site plan in section 185-76, it states in section A, the preliminary site plan shall show the following, and it gives a list that's quite extensive. And so when it comes down to the proposed off-street parking, it does state that that's got to be in this preliminary site plan proposal. Then in section B, and we do have that in the site plan, preliminary site plan. In section B, perhaps this is what the discussion has been about. If you'll allow me to read.
Of course.
It states, this is 185-76, B as in boy. The town commissioners may establish additional requirements for preliminary site plans and may waive a particular requirement if, in their opinion, the inclusion of that requirement is not essential to a proper decision on the project. If a preliminary site plan is approved by the town commissioners without the inclusion of a particular requirement, the town is deemed to have waived that requirement. So perhaps just that particular, those statements there might help you folks to know what you may or may not include in your referral to the planning and zoning. And then, of course, if you need to know additional information about the Board of Adjustments, I've got it here in 185-66.
I'm not going to ask you to repeat all of that, but is it possible for you to, if the commissioners deem that it's not what, in order to grant a waiver, it's not necessary? I'm just wanted to clarify the word.
It states, they may establish additional requirements for a preliminary site plan and may waive a particular requirement if, in their opinion, the inclusion of that requirement is not essential to a proper decision on the project.
So Mayor, Ms. Hinks is identifying language that we're trying to interpret, and the applicant is offered their interpretation. And I think it's incumbent upon me and Mr. Mandalis to talk this through. And it's additionally incumbent upon me to advise council as to what I think the council's authorities are and aren't in this regard. So Ms. Hinks has identified the issue, but I don't think this is the right forum for attempting to resolve that legal question.
I agree with you. I just thought it was important to hear the wording in terms of what was essential or not essential, as something as ambiguous as essential as it has. Everyone will have a different opinion on that. So we will leave it to you for this decision in terms of whether or not we have the right to waive this essential or not
Ultimately,
essential.
I'll advise you. I'll give you the best advice I have, and then you all will decide what course you wish to take. Right. Mm-hmm.
So just double checking with you, the addition of the language saying that our referral does not constitute approval means that we have not given approval to the preliminary site plan, and we can still refer it to P&Z without approval of the preliminary site plan. Is that correct?
But I believe that Commissioner Persinger wanted amended to include pending parking requirements per section 185.
Right.
Is that correct, Commissioner Persinger?
Yeah, it says pending resolution of the appropriate responsibility or purview for resolving the question of providing relief from the parking requirement. It's specified in the appropriate section of the code.
Right.
I accept that amendment. Do I have a second?
Is there a second to the original second amendment?
I will second the second amendment.
Any other discussion that I'm
Well, can
learning
we
to
read
Paul?
that back to me so I understand what I'm voting on here? And the public understands? So what is it? What
Sure.
exactly is the motion?
Motion reader.
This is definitely an IQ test, Paul, and I'm not sure I completely appreciate you putting me on the spot to this degree in the meeting here.
That's why I don't like virtual
I
meetings.
think I'm 90% plus where I think it is, but I just want to be sure.
He feels safe doing that from a distance, but he wouldn't do that to you if he was sitting.
The motion is that we refer the conditional use application and site plan to the Planning and Zone Commission. And that the site plan be submitted eventually, showing that the actual parking to be provided on the applicant's property, with the provision that we understand that this referral does not constitute approval. And Commissioner Persinger, you're going to have to add that last sentence.
And that the pending matter is determining which forum is the appropriate forum to advance a request for relief from the parking requirement.
Precisely, end of motion.
Do I,
Okay.
He says, okay.
do I have a second?
Yeah, I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Fred? I couldn't stop my phone here.
Well, the last bit was simply that the referral is also anticipating a determination as to which body has jurisdiction to resolve a request for relief from the zoning code, in this case, the parking requirement.
Good. Much better said than I tried to.
Okay, the
Right now,
summary
I
here
think
is
we're all on the same page.
the motion as stated, provided that it's communicated that it's not approved, it's preliminary, and that the parking issue needs to be resolved. But it's not in there, correct? Is that in summary the motion?
It is, and if I could add one quick thing, regarding a remark
I
that
really thought this was going to be a quick meeting. I apologize.
Well, Mr. Persinger raised the issue of the ordinance, and I would view this motion to be impliedly sending the ordinance to the Planning Commission. That we don't need a separate motion regarding the referring the ordinance that's in your packet to the Planning Commission. The ordinance, of course, is something that can evolve as it undergoes the scrutiny of the Planning Commission and ultimately the deliberations of the council. Mr. Persinger, did you have a question regarding, before we vote on it, do we have a question on the ordinance?
I do. First of all, in the title of the ordinance, the fifth line refers to pursuant to section 25D11A1. There is no D11 that I'm aware of. And I think if you go back to the table on conditional uses for restaurants, the reference here should simply be to section 25D1.
25D1A1.
It should just be D1.
This is the language in the ordinance you're referring to?
This is in the title of the ordinance, yes. I mean, D11A1 may have been corrected sometime, as I think this was based on a previous conditional use approval. And then I also have a question. Within that same section, 185-25, I'm sorry. I'm getting I'm gonna have to go back to the code for a second. I'm sorry. I thought I had this squared away.
Okay, so
I don't know if you found it faster than I have, perhaps. I don't know.
So the reference to 25D1A1, the last one should be in brackets and not in parentheses. That's the
subsection 1.
But the table refers to D1. You go back to the table. Conditional uses, you go down to restaurants. The reference here is to section 185-25D1. It has to be 25D1 because There is a general paragraph there, A, small a, any new facility or expansion of existing facility, which is enclosed outdoor open air and is defined by any one of the general categories. So restaurant is part of that. And as well, my other question is, should we also add number 3 under that, which is in brackets, somewhere here in the ordinance, which deals with commercial, outdoor, open air operations or outside service areas. This has an outside service area and there are 4 requirements there.
Would it be simpler just to say 25D and then just?
Actually, yes. I mean, my response to that was we can say 25D, or we can say 25D1 or 25. We could just stop at 25D1.
D1, I think,
Eliminate. Okay.
but that would then incorporate number 3, which is in brackets for commercial outdoor service areas. Is that correct?
It does. Yes.
Okay.
That addresses your concern there.
Okay.
Thank you.
My other comment, I guess I will leave alone. I'm not in favor of including the waiver of 17 off-street parking spaces as granted until we resolve that, but I suppose that's still on the table and unresolved, and so I will not suggest any change there.
Any other discussion? I believe we have a motion.
Well, I think Fred said our motion referred the ordinance already as well, right?
Right.
I think it's implied that the ordinance is being sent down. Yep.
Yeah, Jim
Mr.
has his
Didi.
hand up.
I just have a simple question that deals with the timing. The planning commission, I believe, is proposing to set this up for a hearing, if you all refer to it, which I assume you will, for November 13th. Do we assume we will have a decision one way or another between the attorneys regarding the parking before it gets to the commission, the planning commission?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, I don't know how the planning commission can proceed without some resolution on this. Okay, that was my comment.
Great. Thank you, Jim. So we have a motion. We've had a second and we've had discussion. Is it okay to go to a vote? Not seeing anyone shake their head negatively. May I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing any? It passes unanimously. Okay.
Very good.
All right. Next on the agenda is town manager comments.
Nothing, sir.
Next on the third, any commissioner comments? Commissioner Jazinski,
No comments.
Commissioner Givings,
Nothing.
Commissioner Bauer,
No comments.
and Commissioner Persinger.
No comments.
I will have, 2 very brief comments, and I do think that this whole process has just again highlighted us to the fact that we need to take a look at our parking ordinance and what brings us current into today's world. We are a community of Uber and scooter and walk and bike, and also, but we need to keep in mind public safety. And, it's for planning and zoning to potentially look at that as not necessarily for this situation, but for future. And just as a matter of comment for the commissioners, as to let you know that it was pointed out to me today by our town clerk, that there was an amendment to Senate Bill 94 amendment, in which we decided as a group to determine how many people need to be here at the anchor versus need to be, or that could be virtual. That since we're currently in a state of emergency, a health emergency, that if we wanted to amend it, and I believe that we'll be sending it to the commissioners. If you wanted to amend the requirements for how many people are here on site, or if anyone's on site, that is a possibility that we can make that amendment at the future. So it's more of to let you know that there's more of a clarification coming down from the governor's office in terms of what we can do in terms of meetings. With that, I have no other.
Can we get a copy of that distributed?
Yeah, Ms. Sanders will send it to you, or Ms. Hudson. Sanders. Ms. Saunders will send that to you. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
It is Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, Paul.
I think he was
Good
just
luck tomorrow.